In 2010, a 29-year-old British construction worker was hard at work at the construction site. He'd followed all the necessary safety rules and was wearing a hard hat and a pair of sturdy steel toe-cap boots. But then he made the bad decision of jumping 6 feet from the scaffold to the floor. He looked down and to his horror, a 6-inch nail had penetrated his boot and gone right through his foot. The poor guy howled in pain and he was rushed to the emergency room. It was unbearable, and so he was given a pain reliever. That didn't do anything to stop the agony, and the doctors then gave him the strongest pain medication they had, fentanyl. After this, they carefully cut off the man's boot. But guess what? The nail had gone between his toes. What was all that screaming about then? Number 10. The Nocebo Patients. So coming in at number 10 is one of the strangest things that have happened in the emergency room. That's people coming in screaming and shouting and pleading with the doctors to stop the intense pain. Except, as with the case of that construction worker, they shouldn't be in any pain. What's the reason, you're wondering? And the answer is something called the nocebo effect. You've all heard of the placebo effect, such as when someone is given a pill that's a dud, but it seems to work for them. The nocebo effect is kind of like a negative version of that. Nothing has happened to them, but the brain tells them something is wrong. That construction worker just saw a nail that looked as though it had gone through his foot, so he believed he was in great pain. The pain, of course, was kind of real, even though that nail had just gone through a gap in his toes. It was all in his head. The nocebo effect is actually quite common when people take certain kinds of drugs. They complain of side effects that just couldn't happen. It's all in their head, and in the world of healthcare, such imaginings cost money and time. We found another case of a man that had a fight with his girlfriend, and so he took an overdose of pills. He was rushed to the hospital and things were looking bad. His blood pressure was very low and the man seemed to be about to pass out. It turned out that the drugs he had taken were actually placebo drugs, but the man's doctor hadn't told him that. Once the guy was told this, he suddenly started getting a lot better and his blood pressure went back to normal. This is no doubt a weird kind of situation at the emergency room, but as you'll see, things can get really messy in there too. Number 9. A man's worst nightmare. We will apologize to you guys in advance for telling you this tale. It's not something you'll easily forget. The story comes from a former United States Army surgical nurse, and she was once asked what the strangest thing she'd seen in regard to accidents. She said one day she got a visit from a middle-aged guy who had decided to perform a bit of surgery on himself. You see, this guy had been in terrible pain due to having kidney stones. In some cases, a person might have very small kidney stones and just pee them out without much discomfort. But if those stones are big, well, they can cause a lot of pain. This guy had been in extreme pain, and for some reason he thought he could perform a little operation himself to get them out. He basically inserted a glass tube into his urethra, you know, that bit of your manhood that carries the urine. The thing is, his muscle contracted and that tube got stuck inside. And if that wasn't bad enough, it then shattered inside him. Removing those tiny shards of glass was quite the job for doctors who treated him. And all we'll say is, kids, don't try that at home. Number 8. The desperate drinker. This was the case of a homeless man who had been taken to a hospital after being found a little bit too drunk. He was in a bad way, and it's not that uncommon for people to die from drinking too much. His blood was checked to see just how much was in his system, and he was then left in the bed. A bit later, and another test was performed, but the results shocked the nurses. The level of alcohol in his blood had spiked. The staff then thoroughly checked the room and they couldn't find a source of alcohol. So where was this guy getting his fix from? One of the nurses then went to a computer to see if anything like this had happened in other hospitals. Indeed, it had. And the reason was, there had been other cases when people had drunk the alcohol in hand sanitizer in the room. He went back to that man's room and found this guy had done the same. He drunk the entire contents. We found cases of teenagers doing this, and in New Zealand, prisoners had been doing it while incarcerated. It's really not a good thing to do and can be dangerous. In 2012 in California, 6 teens ended up in the ER after deciding they'd try and get drunk on hand sanitizer. After that, a medical toxicology consultant from the Children's Hospital in Los Angeles said the teens had been looking on the internet to find the method to best extract the booze. This is another case of when we can say, kids, don't try this at home or anywhere. Number 7. The foreign object problem. It's well known that a lot of people have been sent to the emergency room to have something removed from the place that our food waste comes out of. In fact, there are hundreds of stories of this happening, and there's even a book called Stuck Up, which is a collection of x-rays and stories about people who have got something stuck up in their rear end. The list of weird objects is a long one, and these strange cases were happening a long time before guys in those Jackass movies were doing it for fun. So what's the weirdest thing doctors have ever had to remove? We can't say what the number one spot is, but when doctors found a man who had a Buzz Lightyear doll stuffed inside him, we guess even for them it was somewhat unique. The foreign object problem seems to happen mostly to people aged 20 to 40, by the way, so maybe some of you are in danger right now. Number 6. The Lego Eaters. So a handful of adults might display some strange behavior and get things stuck in them, but some young kids can hardly be blamed for putting things inside their mouth. Many news reports tell us that the snack of choice for kids all over the world is Lego. A problem is choking, of course, but many times the small pieces do come out the other end. We found one account of a kid who ate 60 pieces, so he really must have liked the stuff. A major problem, though, is the possibility of harmful substances in the Lego bricks. A British study said that some Lego bricks they tested contained cadmium and selenium or chromium and antimony. The worst culprits were yellow and red Lego bricks found in older sets. Since so many kids end up swallowing Lego, a bunch of doctors at the Royal London Hospital in England swallowed some themselves to see what harm it could cause. Thankfully, all the doctors were fine. They didn't get sick and just dropped off their piece at the pool. Now, things will get bloodier. Number 5. The calmest patient ever. When ER staff were asked on one forum to talk about the strangest days they had, one British nurse said he was once in an apartment and a man just walked in casually looking a bit lost. The staff asked him, "Can we help you?" The man then looked down at his side where his arm was covered with a blanket. He then told them, "I seem to have lopped my arm off." The staff didn't believe him because the guy was so calm about it all. They asked him to remove the blanket, and to their shock, when he pulled the blanket away, a detached arm went with it. He then looked at them and said, "Told you." Number 4. Life and death. You can find quite a few cases of when a pregnant woman died but the baby inside her was delivered. One particularly sad story happened in 2019 in London. A pregnant woman was stabbed and rushed to the emergency room. She was 8 months pregnant at the time. Unfortunately, the doctors couldn't save her, but they did deliver her baby. We found a similar case in the USA, which also happened not too long ago. In this case, 3 people were shot, and one of them was a woman who was 35 weeks pregnant. She was rushed to the hospital but died. The baby survived but was in critical condition. Such a thing must be heartbreaking for the emergency room workers, but at least they could save one life. That might be sad, but now we have something wonderful to tell you. Number 3. Coming back to life. You might not have heard about something called Lazarus syndrome. It's when the resuscitation efforts on a patient have failed and the person has been declared dead. That's it. They did everything they could. Sometimes the machines are turned off and it's just another loss of life on another hectic day in the emergency room. But then doctors and nurses are shocked when the person comes back to life. This happened to a 27-year-old man in the UK. He had overdosed but was given a shot of something to help bring him out of his unconscious state. They got the man to the hospital, but he went into cardiac arrest and died. All efforts to revive him failed and he was pronounced dead. About a minute later, and something unbelievable happened. His heart started beating again. This time he was revived and the man survived. In 2013, the US media reported a miracle happened to a man named Anthony Yale. An ambulance was called for this 37-year-old man when his family couldn't wake him up. They administered CPR and got his heart going again, but at the emergency room, he couldn't be resuscitated and was declared dead. His son was called and he went into the hospital and didn't expect to find a living father. One of the doctors then noticed something strange. The heart monitor seemed to show a tiny sign of a heartbeat, but that was just like a little blip. That blip happened again and then turned into a trickle. The doctors were astonished and got to work on him again. Eventually, the man's heart started working. The doctors later told the media that this kind of thing in clinical terms just doesn't happen. One doctor said, "I'm calling it a miracle because I've never seen anything like it." The National Institutes of Health said the Lazarus syndrome is very rare and often can't be easily explained. In some cases, the bodies weren't even near staff when the person came back to life, and in at least one case, the person was in the mortuary. Number 2. The survivors. Sometimes in the emergency room, people shock the doctors by not succumbing to what looked like fatal injuries. One doctor wrote that he was very surprised when one man he attended to had been shot 3 times in the head. The doctor said he looked dead and could see that he'd been shot in the temple and twice in the face. He believed the guy's life was over. But it turned out that all those bullets had exited and somehow not damaged the man's brain. This is what the doctor wrote on a forum. I go to examine him and tilt his head back, and he says, "Yo, be gentle." I jump back and scream like a little boy, as did everyone in the room. Literally, the bullets missed his brain in every single shot. Stranger things have happened. In 1995, a man in North Carolina named Kenny Vaughn was shot 20 times and he lived to tell the tale. In 2006, a guy named Joseph Guzman survived 19 gunshot wounds. The rapper you all know named 50 Cent survived after being shot 9 times. A surgeon told the New York Times that being shot multiple times, especially 20 times, and nothing hitting a vital organ is very rare indeed. For the finale, we'll tell you a story that's from the darkest recesses of ER history. Number 1. Man's Best Friend. This was posted on a forum where ER workers compared their horror stories. The man said he worked as a surgeon and he got used to seeing some gory things. So did the nurses too, and they don't usually go pale at the sight of blood since fixing people is their job. But one day, the surgeon said he saw some nurses come out of the emergency room and their expressions were unusual. They seemed in shock. It turns out the patient was a homeless man who had been attacked by dogs, but those dogs had basically taken big pieces of this guy. The surgeon said this is what he saw. The arm was totally gone. He still had the interosseous tendon holding the tibia to the fibula, hard to eat I guess, but otherwise just intact leg bones completely free of flesh. His feet were also mostly gone. The guy actually survived, albeit with bits of him missing. This just shows how hard it can be to work in the emergency room, but also what great job those people do. If you like that video, then we know you'll love one of these 2 stories. Choose either man dead for 45 minutes comes back to life, or I was trapped in a canyon for 127 hours. For more unbelievably insane stories from the Infographics show.